a vision is feasible since and avoid impossible dreams?
The question is one that is always a challenge. However, I believe that as you decide what the vision is, first of all, it has to be something that is almost impossible, and I'll get to that in the cultural discussion later. However, the vision ought to be something that is possible, and it ought to be something that in fact is achievable. And I think that one of the things that happens as you define a vision is that once it's defined and you start striving to achieve it, you'll very quickly understand whether or not it is something that is going to lead you where you want to go, because it will challenge the organization in such a way that as the organization responds and reacts, and as the systems of the organization are altered or modified to achieve the vision, you will be able to make that judgment. There are some businesses that I think you need to look at your resources, you need to understand your people, and you need to understand the market that you're going after. And I think those also, that experience helps provide the foundation that you are going to use in your intuition about creating the vision.
Who should determine standards and who should decide what quality is in an organization?
I think the customer. The customer defines the beginning and the end. The customer defines what their expectations are, and that defines what the quality objectives are for the business. Within the business, the standards that one uses in terms of performance to achieve the quality really can be defined by the organization. And as the organization develops and refines those standards of behavior or those standards of production to achieve the customer satisfaction or the expectations of the customer, the standards will then allow you to achieve that goal. And so the customer defines what quality is, and the customer in a sense is defining the standards because of their expectations, but as the organization addresses the expectations, they're the ones who define the standards.
Could you explain in greater detail the PQMI technology developed by the Bell Laboratories, and how can the importance of this be understood in the overall view of the company?
Okay. PQMI, which was developed by Bell Labs, is a 7-step methodology which looks at a process from beginning to end. And essentially, the first step is assessing the business. What are all the processes within the business? And defining those as the main processes of the business to achieve your objectives and achieve your vision. Once you've defined those key processes, you look to how those processes are executed throughout the business. As your organizations are, just like ours, I'm sure, are functional. There are very functionally aligned organizations. You've got the finance organization or the billing organization or the installation organization, etc., or the service organization. And you need to look at the process from the beginning to the end through all of those. And that becomes, and you name a process owner, someone who is responsible and accountable for that process throughout the entire business. Then you look to each of the functional organizations to define and name an owner for the process, that part of the process that exists in their functional organization. And so we call the first person the process owner, and we call the second person the sub-process owners. As a team, those people then are responsible for the entire process, with the process owner having the accountability. Once you've defined the processes, you then look within the processes to see what things are redundant, what is the capability of the process, does it need to be improved, etc. The normal things that you would do in a quality initiative. And once you've defined that, of course, you go through the improvement steps and you do your trials, and then obviously the process has been re-engineered or redefined, introduced, and then has it in fact affected customer satisfaction. So it's a 7-step process that has been developed over about a 10-year period, which is complementary to and enhances a lot of the quality efforts that we've seen from the experts.
We have another question from the Tlalnepantla Technological Institute. All products are useful if they're fairly perfect. When can you call a product truly perfect?
I'm not sure if a product is ever perfect, and I'm sure Dr. Deming would say that no product is ever perfect. But perfection is defined by the expectation of the customer. And if the customer is completely satisfied with the product they're receiving, you have achieved the level of perfection that is required in the marketplace. There are times when we need to exceed those expectations because we know that the customer's expectations will grow. It's sort of like you when you were growing up. Maybe your first bicycle was one that you'd gotten from your brother, like me. Then later on, I wanted a bicycle of my own, which was new. My expectations had changed. And I went from one that didn't have any gears to one that had 3 gears. And so essentially, the expectations change as customers mature, and the expectations change as the marketplace matures. And so we constantly are trying to meet and then exceed those expectations so that our product is continues to be marketable over a period of time in its product's life cycle.
Could you give us some examples of how, on applying PQMI technology, internal customers eliminate the artificial barriers set up by the artificial organizations?
Yes, the PQMI process, because it is defined end-to-end, and in the business you look at it from end-to-end, from the customer to when the customer is satisfied, requires that the people within the functional groups cooperate with one another and have the same vision and expectation of what the customer is looking for. To do that, needless to say, there's a great deal of communication once you've defined the process. There is a great deal of discussion that takes place. And you want to know and you want to ensure that what comes out of your functional group fits into the other groups. For example, I mentioned in the talk that we had an organization, or when we approached quality without using the process management technique, within the functional organization we would fix a process, but then break 3 functional organizations down the road and not know it. And hence, that's why our initial efforts failed. But once we had defined the process from beginning to end, and we knew what each functional responsibility was, we in fact could then make the connections to deliver to the next organization what they required to be successful. And it started developing that supplier-customer relationship within the organization to help us be more successful.
How can strategic vision affect the performance of the members of an organization?
Unless the organization has a clear vision and understands what it wants to become, the people within the organization really are unsure that what they're doing contributes to the direction of the business. And until we have the vision defined and then the strategies which are going to support that, it's very difficult for people to make decisions of, if I do this and I take X amount of resource in the business and direct it toward this project, am I bettering the business? Are we going to achieve our objectives? Or in fact, am I just doing something that is very nice to do and probably should be done, but maybe it doesn't fit within the definition or the vision of the business? And so it becomes a point becomes a decision point for people as they make substantive decisions of behavior and direction in the business within their part of the organization. So I find vision to be very, very powerful, and once the people are engaged behind it, it's very, very exciting to see what happens to an organization.
We'll now be taking a call from the Culiacán Technological Institute.
Le escuchamos. Su pregunta, por favor.
Your question?
Yo quisiera saber cuál es la diferencia
I'd like to
desde el
know
punto de vista del expositor
what
entre visión
the difference is between vision and mission.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
There's a lot of discussion between the difference between mission and vision, and I probably agree with much of the discussion that says it's a semantic one. I believe personally that sometimes you can use those two as synonyms or the same word. Vision, however, as it describes the what, is sort of, if you look at it, it can be sort of an object of what you want to become. If your mission is to get to that vision, then mission becomes an operative word or an action word, just as you sometimes can substitute what is our purpose. That is a word that is used sometimes. Whatever you choose to describe as the what that the business wants to become is really the key, because that is as important as defining how you're going to get there. And the word you choose, I think, is up to you. Because within our own organization, sometimes we use the word mission. One of our Baldrige winning segments of AT&T last year uses purpose, but it is still the what that is driving the business.
Vamos a recibir ahora una llamada del Instituto.
We'll now be getting a call from the Morelia Technological Institute.
Sí, le escuchamos.
La pregunta que nosotros tenemos hoy con Morelia en México es si la definición de la visión es una idea futuro.
The definition of vision is an idea of the future. How can you put timelines on that vision, that future vision?
I think that you put timelines on the vision with the strategies that you are executing and the milestones to achieve the vision. I don't know that the vision is going to remain totally static over time. And as a matter of fact, as I suggested during the talk, I believe that as the marketplace changes, and it's changing very rapidly these days in the 90s, and as the competitors challenge you, and then as you refine the markets that you're going to serve, you in fact will probably modify the vision that you have for your company or for your organization. And as that evolution takes place, and I think it's important that the evolution take place because we need to be always future and forward thinking. So I don't think that the vision is something that's put in concrete for decades. I think the vision is something that is put in semi-concrete for 2 to 3 years or 4 years and needs to be revisited on a regular basis. And each of the organizations within the total company, as they are looking, if you're in a large organization, ought to be looking at theirs on a regular basis as well. And so I think the timelines are defined by the strategies, the milestones are defined by how you interpret the strategies, and then what the marketplace is demanding. The vision, however, of serving that market is something that is long-term, and I wouldn't put any, my feeling is, as a practitioner of business, I wouldn't put that in concrete or make it firm.
Vamos a tomar ahora una llamada del Instituto Tecnológico.
We now have
Lázaro Cárdenas.
a call from the Lázaro Cárdenas Technological Institute.
La pregunta que nosotros queremos hacer es cuál es el mejor camino
What's the
para
best
hacer
way
llegar la visión de la organización a
to
todos sus miembros.
spread the vision, the organizational vision, to all of the members of the organization?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I missed part of it.
¿Nos puede repetir la pregunta? What's the best way of spreading the vision to all of the members of the organization?
Oh, thank you. I believe in a large organization, the best way of spreading the vision to the organization is what we learned from Bill Bellegarde, as I suggested in my talk. And that was, you need to involve all of the people in cascading throughout the organization. If the leader has, the leadership group has a vision of where they want the business to go, and it's a large organization, many times the employees down the chain may or may not understand the context of the words that have been chosen to describe the vision. And so it's important that as you come down the organization, that the people within the organization wrestle with the understanding so that in their own words they can express what the vision is. And they may express it with a few different words, but as long as it has the same essential meaning is important. So it's meeting with the people, it's communicating it, it's constantly reinforcing it, and I think one of the things that has shown up particularly in this country with the Baldrige winners is that you can ask almost any person in the business what the vision is, and they can tell you. So people become very knowledgeable of it, and it also becomes a source of energy for them because they have that common purpose and that common focus. So briefly, I think it's very clearly stating it, it's cascading it throughout the organization, and in large organizations, involving the people so that they, in fact, can use their own words to describe it and take ownership of it. That, I believe, is how it is the most effective way. At least for us, that's how it's worked.
Hemos estado recibiendo algunos.
We have been receiving some faxes here in our studio. How do you make an organization's vision compatible with the personal visions of the employees, stockholders? This comes from the Teléfonos de Mexico.
Aligning the visions of the employees with the visions of the business and with the stockholders is a complex issue. However, as you wrestle through it, I think you'll find that it becomes a very rewarding thing to do or to accomplish. If the vision of the business is very clearly stated, and generally the vision of the business will probably serve the stockholders very well, and that is why the stockholders will choose to join or reinvest in the business, because they understand the vision hopefully in many instances or more that we would like. The people also, moving to the employees, the people then who have their own vision of what they want to become in life can choose to align with the business or choose to work somewhere else. Now that sounds a little harsh, and I'm going to talk about that a little in one of my other segments. But I believe that it's important that if there's clarity around what the business is doing, the people that will choose to work with the business or for the business will align themselves with those values and dedicate their energies behind it. And so part of it is a business decision, and part of it is a personal decision by the employee. However, facilitating the understanding is the difficult part, because as I'm sure you have in your own life or feel, why should I share my personal vision with the business? What do they need to know? However, I will talk a little bit about that and after segment 2, because it is very, very important to what has helped us be successful.
Thank you very much, and thank you out there for your participation. We will be continuing our questions and answers after the coming second segment of the presentation by Mr. Hoffman, Vision and Culture.
Our journey continued. We started to realize that there was a subtle undercurrent that existed within the organization, and we weren't sure exactly what it was. It was sort of the attitude that, you know, real men don't eat quiche, so real men don't do quality. Very subtle, but it kept appearing. And so we were searching for what was it, what was the next ingredient that would move our quality initiative and effort forward. And we started looking around and decided that maybe there was something within the culture and how we were presenting quality to our organization and how we then expected our customers to react and our suppliers to be involved that maybe was causing a problem. Because people wanted to do things right the first time, and they really wanted to achieve 0 defects. But maybe there was something in the culture that was driving a behavior that we were unsure of. And so we looked to the Archetype Institute in Paris and embarked on a 5-year study within the company and with some research outside of the company. And an archetype looks for a certain pattern, sort of a distinctive emotional logic surrounding a particular word. And needless to say, the first word we were looking at was quality. And then we wanted to understand the ramifications of the other words that are associated with quality and how that fit into the culture. Well, more often than not, when we talked about quality, we heard that people didn't expect things to go right the first time. While Americans want zero defects, those phrases go against what's imprinted in the mind because we know things don't work right the first time. And another discovery that we made, what is in the United States, that when we were discussing the word perfection, or being perfect, we discovered that it was not synonymous with quality. And perfection in the United States more means the end. It's something final. And one could say that perfection equals death. If you reach perfection, there's nothing more. There's a third element that feeds into this. We have what is the reaction to the word quality. We have the understanding of trying to use the words of getting people to zero defects and perfection and the reaction to that. But there's also something else that feeds into the United States archetype, which is a little different. And we've done the test not only with people who have been born in the United States, but people who have emigrated here in the last 20 years. Americans love the hero, the underdog who through hard work, maximum effort, becomes the champion. And no one else likes to be the opposite, which is the loser. Dr. Colter-Papier, who is the head of the Archetype Institute in Paris, designed some models for us. And in the model that you see, there's a quality line, and the quality line continues to move up because customers' expectations continue to move up and are higher and higher expectations. So they are constantly evolving and moving. However, when you ask somebody from the United States and you're talking about quality, the words that they choose most frequently to describe it are, "It works." And so the important thing is, for them, instead of it being perfect, it's something that works. Now take those three concepts and mentally think of how we had gone to Japan to find out what and how we should approach quality. And the Japanese culture was quite different. In the Japanese mentality, the reference for quality that they make is perfection. And recall what I just said about what perfection is for the United States. It's the end. So what is the Japanese way? When challenged, the Japanese will work with great diligence, constance of purpose to get closer and closer to meeting the expectations. They squeeze out every last bug and deviation to ultimately achieve perfection. Because perfection is a wonderful source of positive energy in Japanese culture. If they achieve perfection, they become highly respected and revered as masters. They receive tremendous respect, status, and recognition. And a benefit, and also part of the recognition, is they are expected to teach others when they've reached that perfection. In America, or the United States, on the other hand, once people have achieved the highest level of excellence, they don't want to continue doing it. They get bored. Because people in the United States don't like being methodical. And the fact that there's very little recognition for persevering and maintaining quality, at least the way we understand it, there really wasn't much of a drive from a recognition perspective, or no hero element in being the quality person. As you're looking at the graphic, you will notice that the dotted line, which represents the United States, falls off. And so people become disinterested because they're not persevering and they're not being recognized as the hero. An example of that might be a very tragic one, which was our space program. We had multiple manned space flights. And over time, people got disinterested. And unfortunately, due to a quality problem, the O-rings in the Challenger spacecraft were defective. And because we weren't on top of it, quality fell off, and it ended in this tragedy. So how do we engage or get people in the United States to move forward in quality? Well, research has shown that the United States people search for the impossible dream. And the impossible dream has two characteristics. First of all, the goal has to be almost literally impossible, yet worth striving for. Think of the gold medal Olympic hockey team from the United States a few years ago. A bunch of kids from nowhere that got together and had an impossible dream of winning the gold because everyone said they couldn't do it. And in fact, they did. And they became heroes. Also, the goal must be inspiring. Just the thought must be inspiring. Just maybe people can really do this. Reflect again back on John Kennedy's objective of putting a man on the moon. We didn't have the technology. We didn't have the know-how. But just maybe we could really do that. And so those are two characteristics of the impossible dream. Now, looking at the model, the vital step in working with quality in the United States is to create a sense of urgency so that the quality does not fall down below the quality line when we go into that natural tendency of backing off. Another thing that we learned is that because the archetype for the United States folks includes failure, remember we just said we kind of expect it to fail, but it works, okay? There's a very important piece of quality which is not associated with the products. Products do not have to be defect-free, especially if the people who buy them feel cared about when their problems occur. Well, what is the impact of this? Certainly, effective handling of customer problems doesn't degrade a customer-supplier relationship. It actually solidifies the relationship. In one study, the reasons customers left a company were this. 70% of them left, and it had nothing to do with the product. Of the 70%, 20% said the reason they didn't buy another product from them was because they didn't get any contact or personal attention from the company. And 50% said that when they did receive attention, it was either unhelpful or rude from the customer contact representative. So a very important element in quality is caring. Very important. Because when Americans think about quality, they think about quality traditionally as being achieved through the following ranking: technology, then plans, leadership, and emotion. After procuring the latest technology, leaders become in developing the plans to achieve quality. And then, by executing the roles of walking the talk and setting the direction, which are important steps, they think that the predominant part of achieving quality or success has been completed. And while all of those are a big step, emotions seem to be considered last. And think about emotions as a symbol for people. And if we think about emotions as a symbol for people, think back to what we saw that was so important in vision. Because in vision, we had to capture the hearts of people before we could go anywhere. So if we think of